You know, overrated and horror movies kinda go hand in hand. The second someone tells you this movie is so terrifying, immediately you're kinda like, I'll be the judge of that, and you come out of it with like the badge of honor saying, that wasn't even very scary. It's easy to like have something be hyped and then want to feel like we're in a position of actually judging whether or not someone else's criticism is valid. It's just this weird kind of natural thing I feel like we all do. For instance, a movie like Get Out. I mean, everyone had been talking about how that was the greatest horror movie ever made, and by the time I actually got around to seeing it, I actually did enjoy it, but I was slightly underwhelmed. I was like, oh, this is the greatest horror movie ever made. Obviously, those are unrealistic expectations, but the truth is, if I just put that on a random Tuesday night and I had no prior expectations, I probably would have been the one going to my friends saying, dude, you gotta watch this movie. Expectations are really critical when it comes to how we go into movies. I've done a lot of work to try to clear my mind from having prior expectations alter my perception of something, but sometimes it just doesn't matter. You hear the hype, you hear the thing, and your kind of subconscious kicks in and you get defensive towards a movie for no good reason. Now, it's not super common for horror movies to get acclaimed critical praise anyway, but these few movies that I have coming up are some of the ones that you commonly hear as being some of the best horror movies. But let's start at the bottom of my list with number 5. We're gonna go with The Shining. Obviously, The Shining is a classic movie. There's no doubt about the fact that Stanley Kubrick is an excellent filmmaker who's very meticulous in his cinematography, and that cinematography is present throughout this film in a jaw-dropping way. Jack Nicholson does deliver one of the most incredible horror performances, I think, of all time. But with that hype behind it, I finally got around to seeing this movie. It was probably about 5 years ago that I first saw it. And honestly, I was disappointed. It wasn't that it wasn't scary. It wasn't that it didn't have good cinematography or good imagery. To me, it was that I didn't care at all about the characters. And god damn, it's a Stanley Kubrick movie with Jack Nicholson delivering an over-the-top crazy performance. Shouldn't this be like a knockout movie for character drama? No, it just isn't for me. Jack Nicholson's scene at the bar is of course a standout. You could watch that scene on its own and it feels incredible. But yeah, one of the biggest shocks to me about this movie was how little work it did to set up the evolution of Jack Torrance's character. We're supposed to see him kind of devolve into a madman and then turn on his family, and I kind of just felt like from the get-go he was a little off and was already kind of an unstable person for his family. Now, I still think the movie is terrifying. I still think there's some great bone-chilling moments and epic imagery, and you probably should watch the movie and make up for yourself what you think. But for me, I just wasn't that invested in the family. I wasn't that invested in the evolution of Jack Nicholson's character, unfortunately, and it was disappointing for me. Okay, number 4 on this list. I'm going to bring it as modern as this list gets with a film that came out last year, 2024, and that was Osgood Perkins' Longlegs. I do think that there is more mixed critical response than the movie was kind of letting on. It had those like really bolstered Rotten Tomatoes scores. The social media campaign was very, very well done and in your face, and I think this movie had long legs at the box office. You know, it was the kind of movie that just seemed to still be in theaters to the point where me and my wife were both like, you know what, we need to go check this movie out. Now, I think a lot of things work really well in this film. There is some beautiful cinematography, very David Fincher-esque kind of photography, I would say. Nicolas Cage gives a very insane, unhinged performance in the movie, and I really love him. However, he doesn't get a ton of screen time. But my biggest grievances with this movie is that it's a murder mystery crime thriller, and when it comes to the mystery aspects and the twists, those just didn't really seem to gel or come together very well for me. There's a lot of moments where you're kind of questioning the decisions that the characters are making in the film, and when it comes to an effective twist or murder mystery film, I think that needs to be kind of bulletproof for it to work. I don't want to spoil any of the twists for you because, again, that's not what this review is. It's kind of more of an overview, but yeah, the twist just really didn't work for me, and honestly, the murder mystery in general, once we hit the back half of the movie and I started to realize, oh, how simple and straightforward it actually is, but that it was filled with a lot of illogical conclusions, I just felt like the movie was kind of pretentious. It was just trying really hard to be smarter than it was, and I don't know, you shouldn't have that feeling come through while you're watching the movie that the script is just not very good, and I just didn't think the script was that good. Maybe if they had spent more time in pre-production kind of buttoning that up, because there's a lot of great filmmaking going on, some really good performances, and some really tense moments, but other than that, it's a forgettable film and seemed to be getting a lot of hype. So that's why it makes the list. Number 3, we're going to take you back in time a little bit to what's possibly a forgotten film. I don't think it's fully forgotten in the horror audience, but a movie called Sinister with Ethan Hawke. I'm a huge Ethan Hawke fan. I love him in movies, but Sinister came out at a time where I was not really that into horror movies, but I just kept hearing how great the movie Sinister was and how it's not like other horror films. It's not filled with those cliches. It's actually very spooky, and I just didn't like the movie. It's not that it didn't have good ideas, it's not that it wasn't scary, but it's filled with all of the traditional tropes of a character just not flipping on a light after they've had traumatic experiences and they're walking down a hallway, or going up into an attic all by themselves with no lights. I mean, just stupid shit, cliche camera work that really just pisses me off when I watch a horror movie. And normally I'm extremely forgiving of that kind of thing because I'm watching a horror movie and that's what you expect in the genre. But Sinister had so much going for it. It has so many good elements, but then it's using all of these illogical things where you're just screaming at the screen like, turn on a goddamn light. So yeah, Sinister really bothered me in that way. You might think that's a dumb reason to not like the movie, but it's enough when a movie is almost good and then like it's not because of simple things. Like, let's get creative and figure out new ways to scare the audience than having characters behave in illogical ways. That's just my opinion. Moving on. Number 2 on this list is the Robert Eggers film, The Witch. Now, I've grown to really like Robert Eggers as a filmmaker. He's kind of on the up and up in general as a modern master filmmaker of our time. He's done The Lighthouse, which is often considered a masterpiece. He just came out with Nosferatu last year, which I really enjoyed, however, not as much as Bram Stoker's Dracula. And then he did the Viking movie. I can't think of the name of it, but I really enjoyed it. The Northman. There it is. I really enjoyed that film. So yes, I've liked him. I've liked his style. I've liked his filmmaking. But The Witch, I actually was a part of the very first screening at Sundance Film Festival. I know, name drop, experience drop, whatever you want to call that. I was volunteering at the festival that year in 2014 or 2015, whenever it was that it came out. And so I got invited to the free volunteer screening that was the first screening of The Witch. Robert Eggers was there, and he had just flown in the copy of the film the night prior, and it was barely in time for them to actually premiere it. And it was actually really fascinating to listen to him talk about the movie afterward. But it was the kind of film that I remember in the first screening, me and my friend watched it together and we were both kind of just like, like there were some cool shots, there's a couple of cool moments, but it's a very slow, drawn out movie. There's not a whole lot of depth to the story or characters. Some good visuals, good atmosphere, but you know, it was kind of mid is how I felt about it. And in that first screening, there were actually people that got up and walked out of the theater like halfway through, and sadly, some people that got up and left during the credits and didn't stick around for the Q&A, which I always stick around for the Q&As. You get a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You should do that. And so it was funny because I saw the movie, me and my friend Ben, who I saw it with, we both kind of walked out thinking, it wasn't that great. It wasn't like I didn't like the film at all. I saw a lot of potential in a lot of the things that were there. But what was crazy is I had this idea that the movie just wasn't that well received because of how my first audience reaction went. And as the festival went on throughout the 2 weeks while I was at Sundance, I just kept hearing The Witch come up, and suddenly the buzz for The Witch just got massive. By the end of the festival, people were talking about how The Witch was one of the greatest standouts from the festival. And I was like, damn, the movie that people were walking out of the first night, I was so surprised by that. And clearly the next few screenings, its opening night screening and the screenings that continued throughout the festival, had a completely different audience reaction than the one I was in, and it just took off. And then that movie released like a year later in cinemas, and I kept hearing again like The Witch, The Witch, The Witch, and I was like, damn, that movie that I didn't really care for, like what the hell? It just kept blowing up, and eventually I was like, maybe I just missed something. And I watched it again in like 2016, and I was like, No, this is exactly what I remembered. They didn't change it. It was the same film, and it was very mid, in my opinion. So, I don't know. It's clearly not a movie for me, but I was blown away at the hype that The Witch had. And, it also introduced us to Anya Taylor-Joy, who goes on to be a phenomenal actress, and Robert Eggers, the phenomenal director now. So maybe it was just one of those kind of like, we're almost there kind of movies. We've got so much talent involved and so much potential. And a lot of people saw that and praised it for those reasons. But as a film on its own, not a big fan of it. So there's my big story of The Witch. But okay, number one, this is the movie or franchise to me that is the most overhyped and is a recent one again. It's one that I've just personally not been a big fan of, that a lot of people really love. And that is It and It Chapter 2. And I'm talking about the remakes, the ones that came out in 2017 or whatever year it was. I didn't look up the years again before I shot this. The ones with Bill Skarsgård playing It. I don't really care for these movies that much. I think the first one is better than the second one. It's not like I don't like them. I get sucked into them when I'm watching them, or at least the first one I do. I think that the casting is fantastic. I think the chemistry between the leads is palpable. You feel like you're part of the friend group. It gets you into this vibe and this feeling like you want to be running around on the bikes with the kids. And Bill Skarsgård is a perfect It. The very opening scene with Georgie in the sewer is still one of the most terrifying, scary scenes in any horror movie. I think it really is. Watching It come up out of the water, drenched, and just the way he talks, it's so scary. So you might be wondering, why don't you like these movies? Well, my biggest issue with these movies, and it could be more of an issue with the source material, there's just not enough to the story or to the rule set of It as a character. For instance, we get this scene that sets the tone so well with Georgie and the little brother that dies, and now we're terrified of It. But then we go throughout the rest of the movie where It confronts each kid on his own, has a really intense, scary scene, but after we get through like the third or fourth one, we start to realize, oh, he's not going to kill any of these kids. He's going to give them the opportunity to all band together, come down into the sewer together, and then overtake and overpower It. And that just always kind of surprised me, like, okay, why doesn't It actually take his chance at killing these kids while they're the most afraid of him, while they're isolated, while they're alone? Because from my understanding, It's power grows based on the fear that his opponent has in him, right? Well, these kids are fucking terrified, so you can't tell me that he doesn't have enough juice flowing from their fear to kill them in those moments. So then I'm thinking, oh, so maybe It can't kill them outside of the sewer. He has to lure them to the sewer. That would be a fucking fantastic idea. To me, that would be such a good rule set, is that It only has power to physically kill or murder when he brings them to the sewer, his own place, his own home. But that's not the case, because It goes around town killing any other random side characters whenever he wants to. So there are no rules. There's no real rule set there, and so he just doesn't kill these kids for no good reason and just lets them build up power and come overpower. Anyway, the first movie, I'm like, okay, it's still decently enjoyable. I still like it, but the second movie is where the problems really start to set in, because we go through the same rigmarole, if you will, of It having to have one scare scene with each of the adult versions of the kid. And every single time it ends with him not killing one of the adults. The scares start to become less and less as the film franchise goes on, because you know It is never going to do anything. The characters have too much plot armor. It doesn't have any power to kill them. It becomes just boring. Nothing is happening. Like, any momentum the plot has is immediately stalled whenever they do one of these horror scenes, these horror sequences that they have laced throughout the movie. And the second one is even worse, because you have a horror scene for each adult character with It that doesn't result in anything happening or the story moving forward. But then you also have flashback scenes with the kids, and you get a horror scene with each kid again. And so you get twice the amount of horror scenes that result in no movement for the plot and no actual consequences story-wise with a character or anybody dying. So it just drags the franchise or the movie out so much. and then they all just go into the sewer and come together and overpower him. So it's just a very weak story, in my opinion. To me, there's a clear way of making it more interesting, which is that it has to lure them into the sewer for him to have any power to kill them. But whatever. I do think the performances are great. I think the casting of the adult children is great. And maybe that's all it is people are so used to horror movies with like a bad cast or low budget that having a terrifying performance from it, having great performances from our characters feels like enough, but there is just no plot movement or momentum that's interesting to me. So Chapter 2 has good scenes. It has I love the opening 25 minutes in the Chinese restaurant and stuff. I think there's a lot of great character work being done, but the movies just stall out. They lack momentum, they lack plot structure, they lack anything interesting story-wise with it. So yeah, that's my kind of most controversial pick, if you will. It is my most overhyped, most overrated horror franchise, horror films. Let me know if you agree in the comments below, or if you think I'm wrong, also let me know that. And tell me what your most overhyped horror movies are, because I would love to hear them below. Anyway, follow me on Letterboxd. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.